Chapter 26 of Cosmimetry. Let us have a few words now concerning cosmimetry, which is divided into cosmography and geography. Both measure the world and distinguish it into parts. The first, according to a method drawn from the heavenly bodies, but distinguishing places as they are situated under such stars or constellations, measuring them by scales or degrees or minutes, by climates, by the difference of day or night, points of the winds, various risings of the stars, elevations of the pole, parallels, meridians, shadows of gnomons and the like, all of which is performed by mathematical rules. The second, not regarding anything in the celestial bodies, measures the worlds by furlongs and miles, divides it into mountains, woods, lakes, rivers, seas and shores, nations, people, kingdoms, provinces, cities, ports, and whatever else is worthy taking notice of. They native customs, native habits show, and what each region suffers there to grow. And an imitation of painting, according to the rules of geometry and perspective, describe the whole world in plain tables or maps, in little volumes painting all the world. Of this they reckon chorography to be a part, which, undertaking the particular description of particular places, sets them out more fully and accurately. Each part distinguished, various order yields of vines, of woods, of meadows, fountains, fields. Behold how swelling streams the ocean fill. There falls a valley, there a mounting hill with woody top assails the distant stars. All these things and whatever we have before spoken of in this chapter, cosmimetry teaches us in chief, but what authors shall instruct us in this art? So manifold are the contentions among them about bounds, longitudes, latitudes, magnitudes, measures, distances, climates, and qualities of countries, all which Eratosthenes has one way explained, Strabo another way Marinus, another way Ptolemy, another way Dionysius, another way the later authors. Neither do they agree about the navel or middle of the earth, which Ptolemy places under the equinoctial circle. Strabo believes it to be the mountain Parnassus in Greece, with whom Plutarch and Lactantius the grammarian agree and believe that in the time of the deluge it was the only mark of distinction between the skies and the water. When all the world lay all in water drowned, this only appeared, and the water's utmost bound. But if this reason be the only satisfactory reason of that opinion, then shall not Parnassus of Greece, but Jordius, a mountain of Armenia, be the navel of the earth, which, as Berosus testifies, first appearing above the waters, was the first resting place of the ark. Others assign other places, and how the middle of the earth was found out by the flying of eagles. There are some divines who, thrusting their sickle into this corn, will have Jerusalem to be the middle of the earth, because it is written by the prophet, God hath wrought salvation in the middle of the earth. Lucretius, Lactantius, and Austin fall under the same censure, who have so constantly denied the antipodes, as also those who deny any other habitable part beyond Europe, Asia, and Africa, which notwithstanding we find to be utterly false by the voyages and discoveries of the Spaniards and Portugals, who also confirmed to us all the torrid zone to be inhabited, contrary to the fables and trifles of the poets. Other errors of the geographers we have recited in the chapter of history. Now this art that undertakes to teach us to describe and measure so large a world, such unsearchable seas, and discover to us the situation of all islands and regions, bounds and remarkable places, together with the originals, customs, manners, and different dispositions of innumerable nations. What fruit doth it further yield us, but only that it makes us covetous to pry into the concernments of other people, while we forget ourselves? And as St. Austin in his Confession on Faith, men travel to admire the high mountains, the prodigious waves of the sea, the large and dismal falls of rivers, the compass of the ocean, and the rounds of the stars, but in the meantime forsake themselves. Pliny saith that it is madness to measure the earth, which while we endeavor to measure, we go ourselves beyond all bounds. Chapter 28 of Architecture. No doubt, but architecture seems to bring great advantages and ornaments, both to public and private building. This makes us walls and roofs, mills and carts, rivers, ships, temples, churches, towers, fenced walls and fortifications, and all other engines, either to defend or adorn both public and private buildings. A very necessary and honest art, did it not so much bewitch the minds of men, that there is no man fierce scarce to be found, if his wealth will permit him, who does not wholly employ himself either in rebuilding or adding to that which is well and decently already done, through which insatiable desire of building it happens that there is no end or bound thereof, but to please fancy, rocks have been cut, valleys filled up, the bowels of the earth digged into, promontories made over the sea, the currents of rivers turned, seas joined to seas, lakes exhaust, pools dried up, the seas curled, the depth of the ocean stretched into, and new islands have been made. All which things, though they seem to have been done in defiance of nature, yet have brought not a little advantage to the public. But let us compare with these all those other things that are of no use at all, but for men to gaze and flare at, and out of vain ostentation to show the vastness of the builder's wealth, such as are the superstitious wonders of the Egyptians, Greeks, Etrurians, Babylonians, and other nations, their labyrinths, pyramids, obelisks, colossus, mausoleum, the monstrous statues of Rhampsinitus, Sesostris, and Amasis, and that extravagant sphinx, in which King Amasis was laid to be entombed. For, saith Pliny, it was hewed out of a natural red stone. The compass of the head was 102 foot round the forehead, the length thereof 143. But there are greater wonders than this. The stupendous work of Memnon and Semiramis in Bagasianum, a mountain of Media, of vast effigies, containing 17 furlongs in bigness, which had been far exceeded by that architect, whoever he were, whether Stesicrates, as Plutarch reports, or Democritus, as Vitruvius asserts, who proposed to have made an effigies of Alexander out of the mountain Athos, which should he have held in the hand thereof a city capable to receive 10,000 men. We may add to these the Babylonian den, the basest whereof was a full furlong in compass, as Herodotus witnesseth, together with that famous tower which was made to swim in the wide sea, up on the backs of glass lobsters. With these may be numbered the Georgian edifices, the triumphal arches, the vast temple of the gods, the especially in Ephesus dedicated to Diana, which was 200 years in building at the expenses of all Asia, and that chapel dedicated to Latona, built in Egypt out of one stone, broad in front 40 cubits and covered over also with one entire stone, as also the statue of Nabuchodonosor, king of Assyria, all of pure gold, 60 cubits in bigness, which it was a capital crime not to worship, and another statue 40 cubits high, framed all out of one entire topaz, in honor of an Egyptian queen. Not unlike these are the temples erected in our days, with most lofty towers and spires, vast heaps of stones, rising to an incomparable and prodigious height, together with innumerable steeples for bells, erected at the vast expense of money drained under the pretense of pious uses and charity, which had been better improved to the relief of thousands of the poor, who, being the true temples of God, perish in the meantime with hunger, cold, and sickness, more proper to be kept in repair with those sacred alms. Now, what destructions, what devastations this art causes among men whose warlike engines of batteries, catapults, scorpions, slings, and other manifold instruments of death, framed by the chief industry and invention of her professors, so many nations thereby ruined, so many cities thereby destroyed, do afford sufficient testimony, and of this, not only by land but by sea. Whole navies built only for fight and combat do give evident proof, wherein men do not seem so much to navigate as to inhabit the most dangerous seas, which as they are of themselves full of hazard and terror, by these ships are rendered far more unsecure and terrible to us. Therein, as on the solid land, fighting and robbing one another. The first that writ of architecture was Agatarchibus, an Athenian. Afterwards, Democritus and Anaxagoras, after them Silenus, Archimedes, Aristotle, Theophrastus, Cato, Varro, Pliny, and lastly Vitruvius and Nigrigentius. Of modern authors, Leo Baptista, Friar Lucas, and Albertus Ducitus. Chapter 29 of Miners and Metals. To architecture is adjoined mining and digging of metals, an art of no small ingenuity, discovering by the various superficies of the earth, either in plain or mountain, what veins are there to be found, however they extend their bounds and sides, and how to undertop the hollow and empty bowels of the earth, concerning which Strato Lampsacus among the ancients hath written a large treatise entitled De Machinis Metallicus. Though how out of the metallic ore to consolidate and purify the true metal by fire, or if mixed how to separate them, few or none have hitherto taken pains to teach, perhaps because, that being an art too mechanic and servile, learned and ingenious men have thought it beneath their studies. However, being myself some years since made overseer of some certain mines by his imperial majesty, Searching diligently into the nature of all those things, I began to write a special treatise thereof, which I have yet in my hands, continually adding and correcting the same as my experience and knowledge increased, intending to omit nothing that may serve to further the invention and knowledge thereof, whether in relation to the searching and discovering of the vein, melting the ore, underpropping the mines, framing all manner of engines, and whatever else belongs thereto, mysteries hitherto altogether hidden before. By means of this art, we come to be professors of all humane wealth, the eager desire whereof hath so invaded mortals that they make their approaches to hell, and seek riches in the very mansions of the infernal ghosts, as Ovid elegantly describes it. Deep in the bowels of the earth they toil, there what she strove ne'er Stygian shades to hide. They dig up wealth, the baneful root of pride, now fatal steel, but far more fatal gold. With gain bewitched did mortals first behold, desire of gain that truth and virtue chased, and in their room deceit and treason placed. Or as another poet doth express himself, now truth is driven out by gold. By gold our laws are bought and sold. Certainly, therefore, he first found out the greatest plague of human life, that first found out mines of gold and other veins of metal. These men have made the very ground the more hurtful and pestiferous, by how much they are more rash and venturous than they that hazard themselves in the deep to dive for pearl. Concerning the places where these metals are found, authors do very much vary. Lead, they say, was first found in the islands called Cassiterides, not far from Spain. Brass in Cyprus, iron in Crete, gold and silver in Pangaeus, a mountain of Thracia. At length they infected the whole world. Only the Scythians, as Solone relates, condemned the use of gold and silver, resolving to keep themselves eternally free from public avarice. There was an ancient law among the Romans against the superfluity of gold, and indeed it were to be wished that men would aspire with the same eagerness to heaven, that they descend into the bowels of the earth, allured with that vein of riches, which are so far from making a man happy that many men repent too often of their time and labor so ill bestowed. Chapter 30 of Astronomy. In the next place, astrology offers itself, otherwise called astronomy, an art altogether fallacious, and more to be derided than the fables of the poets, whose professors are a sort of confident persons, authors of prodigies, who with an impious confidence and curiosity at their own pleasures beyond humane ability, undertake to erect celestial orbs, and to describe the measures, motions, figures, shapes, number, and reciprocal harmony of the stars, as if they had long conversed in heaven, and were but newly descended thence. However, among themselves of most different and dissenting opinions, even concerning those things by which they say all things are kept up and subsist, that I may well say with Pliny, that the uncertainty and inconstancy of this art plainly argues it to be no art at all, of whose very fundamentals the Indians think one thing, the Egyptians another, the Moors another, the Chaldeans another, the Jews another, the Arabians another, the Latins another, the ancients another, the moderns another. For Plato Proclus, Aristotle, Averroes, and almost all the astrologers before Alphonsus, treating of the number of the spheres, reckon up but only 8 spheres, though Averroes and Rabbi Isay aver that one Hermes and some Babylonians did add a 9th, to which opinion Azarchiles the more adheres, with whom Albertus Teutonius agreed in his time, for what notorious fact I know not, called the Great, and all those that approve the excesses and recesses of the spherical motions. But the later astrologers have constituted and appointed pen orbs, which opinion the same Albertus believes that Ptolemy also held. But Alphonsus, following the judgment of Rabbi Isay, surnamed Bazam, held only 9 spheres. But 4 years after, in an edition of his tables adhering to the opinions of Abu Hassan the Moor and Albatenias, he reduced them to the number of 8. Rabbi Abraham Avenzoar, Rabbi Levi, and Rabbi Abram Zakutis believe that no movable orb above the 8th sphere, but they differ very much about the motion of the 8th orb and of the fixed stars, for the Chaldeans and Egyptians are of opinion that it is moved by only one motion, with whom Alpetragus and among the modern writers Alexander Aquinas agree. But all the other astronomers, from Hipparchus even unto these times, affirm the same to be turned with various motions. The Jewish Talmudists assign thereto a double motion. Azarchiles, Tebeth, and Johannes Regiomontanus added the motion of trepidation, which they call approachings and recedings, upon 2 little circles about the heads of Aries and Libra. But in this differing one from another, for that Azarchiles affirms that the movable head is distant from the fixed not more than 10 parts. Tebeth asserts them to be distant one from the other not above 4 parts, with some minutes. Johannes Regiomontanus makes them distant more than 8 parts, which is the reason given that the fixed stars do not always incline to the same part of the sky, but sometimes they return to the place where they begin. But Ptolemy, Albateni, Rabbi Levi, Avenzoar, Zakutis, and among the later authors Paul the Florentine and Austin Ritius, my familiar acquaintance in Italy, affirm that the stars do always move according to the successions of the signs. The later astrologers make a 3-fold motion the 8th sphere, the one which is most proper and is the motion of trepidation, which is finished once in 7,000 years. The second they call the motion of circumvolution, being the motion of the 9th sphere, and is finished in 49 years. The last is made by the 10th orb and is called the motion of the primum mobile, or the rapid and diurnal motion, which turns round in the compass of one natural day. However, among them that give a double motion to the 8th sphere, there is great diversity of opinions. For all the modern authors, and they who admit the motion of trepidation, say that the sphere is carried about by a superior sphere. But Albateni, Albubasan, Alfraganus, Alverus, Rabbi Levi, Abraham Zakutis, and Austin Ritius say that the diurnal motion, which they call the rapid motion, is not proper to any sphere, but that it is made by the whole heaven. Averroes also confirms it, that Ptolemy in his book entitled Narrations doth deny the motion of gyration, and Rabbi Levi saith that Averroes was in the same opinion with Ptolemy, that the diurnal motion was the motion of the whole heaven. Again, there is not less difference among them about the measure of the motion of the eighth sphere and of the fixed stars. For Ptolemy believes that the fixed stars do move 1 degree in 100 years. Albatenius will have them to move so far in 66 Egyptian years, with whom Zacutus, Rabbi Levi, and Aponzus, in the correction of his tables, give their assent. Azarchiles the Moor says that they move 1 degree in 75 years, Hipparchus in 78. Many of the Hebrews, as Rabbi Joshua, Moses, Maimon, Rabbi Ibn Ezra, and after them Hay ben Rodam, in 70 years. Johann Regiomontanus in 80. Augustine Ritius took the middle way between the opinions of Albateni and the Hebrews, delivering his opinion that the fixed stars do not move 1 degree in less than 60 years, not in more than 70. But Rabbi Abraham Zacutus, as Ritius declares, by a tradition of the Indians, discovers to us that there are 2 fixed stars, most diametrically opposite to one another, which do not finish their course, contrary to the order of the signs, in less time than 140 years. And Alpetragus is of opinion that there are many motions of the heavens which are yet unknown to men, which if it be true, then there may be also stars and bodies proper to those motions, which men have either not been able to behold by reason of the height, or else they have not fallen within the discovery of any observation. To which opinion Favorinus, the philosopher, assents, in his oration mentioned by Gellius against Genethbliax, so that it remains most apparent that never any astronomer was ever yet in heaven to teach us the certain and true motions thereof. Neither is the certain motion of the planet Mars known to this day, of which Johannes de Montregio complains in an epistle to one Blanquinus. The error also of the motion of the planet, a certain famous astrologer named William of St. Cloud, above 200 years ago, hath less discovered, but never anyone as yet corrected. As truly impossible it is to find out the ingress of the sun into the equinoctial points, as Rabbi Levi proves, by many reasons. But what shall we say of things since brought to light, and what strange errors were committed about those things in former times? For many, with Tebeth, thought the greatest variation of the sun to be continually varied, when we know now to keep always in one certain measure. And although Ptolemy thought otherwise thereof, yet Albates, Rabbi Levi, Ibn Ezra, and Alphonsus found otherwise by experience. Otherwise also have they found out concerning the motion of the sun, and the measure of year, quite different to what either Ptolemy or Hipparchus delivered. Also, concerning the motion of the ox of the sun, Ptolemy is of one opinion, Albatenus and the rest of another. Concerning the figures of the signs and the considerations and observations of the fixed stars, the Indians have thought one thing, the Egyptians another, the Chaldeans another, the Hebrews another, the Arabians another. Timotheus is of one mind, Hipparchus of another, Ptolemy of another, and the later authors of another. I omit their mad contentions, which is the right or which is the left side of heaven, concerning with which when Though Aquinas and Albertus the Teutonic endeavor to say something seriously, they are yet altogether unable to deliver anything of certainty. Again, what the galaxy or Milky Way should be is yet controverted among astrologers. I admit also all their vain disputes about eccentrics, concentrics, epicycles, retrogradations, trepidations, excesses, recesses, swift motions, and circles of motions, as being the works neither of God nor nature, but the fiddle-faddles and trifles of mathematicians, taking their beginnings from corrupt philosophy and the fables of the poets. Yet, which the professors of this art believe is true, created by God and established by nature, from these fictions deducing the causes of inferior accidents, asserting those feigned motions to be the principles of all inferior motions. These astronomers, a serving maid of Anaximenes, very seasonably taxed with a sharp reply. This maid was wont to walk with her master, who one day going out a little later than ordinary to look upon the sky, while he was gazing among the stars, ne'er minding the situation of the place, fell into a ditch. Then quoth the maid, I wonder, sir, how you can pretend to foreknow things in heaven that cannot tell those things that are just below your nose. Thales Milesius was reprehended with like a witty saying by his maidservant Thressa. Neither does Tully much vary from either. Astrologers, saith he, while they search and pry into every coast of heaven, are ignorant of that which is just before their feet. I myself learnt this art from my parents, and have lost not a little time and pain therein, but at length I found that the whole art had no other foundation than the mere figments and trifles of imagination, and it very much repents me of the time which I have wasted, and I wish I could absolutely forget and abolish the memory thereof in my mind, and would wholly abandon the life thereof, the use thereof, unless the violent entreaties of great personages, who oftentimes make use of noble ingenuities to bad purposes, did not compel me to continue my studies therein, and that domestic profit did not over-persuade me to enjoy the folly thereof, and with toys to please those that seek after and are covetous of trifles, I say trifles, for which hath astrology in it worth notice, unless the fables of the poets, their monsters and wonders with which they have filled the whole region of heaven. Neither do any sort of people more agree one among another than the astrologers and poets. Only in that one thing of Lucifer and Vesperus, the poets affirming that what day Lucifer appears before the rising sun, that day he follows the setting sun, which all the astrologers deny can be done in one and the same day. Only those that place Venus above the sun, because those stars that seem to be at greatest distance from us seem to appear soonest in their rising, and to set more slowly. But this discord between the astrologers about the situation of the stars and planets I had quite forgot, had I not had this occasion to remember them, the handling whereof has been more particular to philosophers than astrologers. For Plato places the sphere of the sun next about the sphere of the moon, and the Egyptians do the like, placing the sun between the moon and Mercury. Archimedes and the Chaldeans make the sun to be the fourth in order. Anaximander, Metrodorus, Chius, and Crates constitute the sun uppermost, below him the moon. Beneath her the other planets and fixed stars. Xenocrates will have all the stars to move in one superficies. No less contention there is among them about the distance and bigness of the sun, moon, and the rest of the stars fixed and wandering. Neither is there any constancy of opinions among them, nor truth of assertion, and no wonder, when the heaven itself, which they so much endeavor to search and dive into, is the most inconstant of all. and crowded with fables and fictions. For all the 12 signs with the northern and southern constellations got on to heaven by the help of fables. And by these fables, astrologers live, cheat, and get money, while the poets, their inventors, are ready to starve for hunger. Thank you for letting me read to you. Please check the description for where to buy my art, where to watch my movie, and where to send me a one-time donation. Happy Halloween, and I will see you tomorrow.